Welcome to Dark Sorcery. I'm Alfredo Martinez, and I have with me once again Gazelam and Guillotine. Hey guys, good to have you back on. And this is episode 3 of Religion and the Occult. This is a series that we got going on Dark Sorcery. Myself and Guillotine, we both have an evangelical Christian background. Gazelam has an LDS Mormon background. And we just kind of, we're all occultists. We just kind of tie in and discuss similarities between the two. So
I want to say real quick, I'm not LDS at all, really. LDS is like a term for the Brighamites that they use in their church. They're not even Mormons, and so.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, we can talk a little bit about that later on because myself, I was not raised Mormon, so. I don't really know too much about that. That's why I like talking to Gazelam because he fills me in on some of those details.
I think they changed the name several times, if I'm not mistaken.
There's so much inconsistencies and things constantly being added and stuff. It's for me it's hard to keep up, but for someone who was raised in that, I can understand how they can keep up with it. But it's all new to me. So, anyways, I just want to start out with this quote that I read, and you guys tell me what you think about it. It is no accident that the occult and religion perpetually attract each other, but without either ever absorbing or destroying the other.
I mean, I think they're dependent on each other in a lot of ways. I mean, especially if you look at South American religions like Kimbanda and things like that, where occultism actually uses religion to its advantage to where it could manipulate it and things like that,
Yeah.
I was just talking about something about the occult because somebody didn't like that I hashtagged occult in some of these videos I was uploading of just people going crazy with road rage or people getting shot in LA, and because I've been doing those viral videos, and they're like, why'd you put hashtag occult? What does that have to do with the supernatural or anything? And
they don't know who you are. Yeah.
In Latin, the original word occult just means hidden, hidden, secretive. I mean, modernly, I think is more of a thing where it's got the connotation of being more supernatural or witchy, so it's really just means something hidden, which I think a lot of these, people getting shot in the street and all that is being hidden by the government sometimes, if we knew how much it was, we'd probably think it was the whole thing is, you see it on the news and everything, but it feels like it's part of like a hidden thing, where it's just not, people don't want to know how much.
Back in the day, that was just an everyday part of life. Doing, similar practices like that and common practices today, like algebra and stuff like that was considered occult, So I think the two terms religion and occult are interchangeable depending on the time period you live in and what part of the world you live in. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think Catholicism itself is a cult just by how much the Vatican's hidden inside the vault.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the stuff. Well, all religions have skeletons in their closet. I know Joel Osteen has a lot of skeletons in his closet.
Yeah. I think there's the thing is there's, if you look at it just by a hidden or even if you want to look at it like esoteric, I think would be a better word for what we use for occult, like commonly, I think in this context, like esoteric, meaning, some secretive knowledge, like the Freemasons, and Pythagoras, and, people don't know that every day. It's kind of hidden away, and you got to go through, you used to have to go through secret societies and all that stuff, but there's always going to be an aspect of religion that's hidden, I think, no matter what religion.
Because you said that there's always going to be an aspect of religion that's hidden, let me ask you this. What about, all the Freemason and secret society rituals that are now being uploaded on the internet that any average Joe could just type in to Google and just download and see what they've been doing behind the scenes this whole time. Not only that, if they have something new behind the scenes, everyone has cell phones. So there's always going to be someone who's secretly recording a ceremony, or just like Gazelam showed us when he showed us what goes on in the temple. Someone had snuck their cell phone in there and started recording some rite that they I guess the heads of the church would not allow to be recorded.
There's always been expositors, you know. The first thing is when somebody has a secret, is that somebody else like.
Well, yeah, but back in the day, it was just like word of mouth. Like someone could sneak in and say, "Oh, guess what I saw so and so doing."
Mm-hmm.
But now with with video proof, everyone with a cell phone and YouTube and Rumble and you got to be more careful about hiding stuff now.
And
if you're a
and
religion
also,
or some kind of.
In the context of Freemasons in America, like in the Wild West type days, or early 1900s. I mean, when I think, like lynching people was easier to get away with, not even people just of color like they were doing in the South, like that horrible, like the Mississippi burning and all the segregation in Tulsa and all that horrible stuff that went on. But I think even like that was the whole thing about the Freemasons. It wasn't necessarily, that it was that they take an oath that if you tell their secrets, they'll kill you. And that had more strength probably back in like 1860 or whatever, even 1900. Now, there's cameras everywhere. There's a lot of law enforcement. There's, you can't really get away with that kind of stuff because, it is what it is. So I think that, and because there was a guy who actually produced a book that had all their secrets back in the 1900s, it was, somewhere in the early 1900s, I think, and he was killed. And there was a huge, and this was in America and in USA, and there was a huge like outlash of Freemasons for that because, and where it ties into Mormonism, what I was going to ask Gazelam about is that's where they get the blood atonement from is actually the Masons, is what I've been told, that threatening somebody with if you give away the secrets, you can die. That's the same thing that like Joseph Smith incorporated, and it morphed into blood atonement. Instead of just don't tell secrets or we'll kill you.
What's funny about that is William Morgan, who was the one that put out the expository and put it into print. That was really just the first three degrees of Freemasonry, but it had all the tokens in it and everything and the degrees. He did mysteriously disappear and was never found. So I figure the Masons were involved with it. In fact, if you really want to see the connection with Freemasonry and Mormonism, my friend Cheryl and Nick put out this book, and Cheryl's husband, Method Infinite. It's all connected with Freemasonry and with Mormonism. Okay. But the thing that's funny about it though is that William Morgan's wife was one of Joseph Smith's polygamous wives too. That's how connected Freemasonry is with.
Wow. Okay. So are you saying that a lot of the rites that the Mormons started practicing, or maybe still practice today, has strong tie-ins or were copies of maybe the first three rites of Freemasonry, or the first 3 degrees?
Directly plagiarized from it. The first
directly 2 plagiarized. Okay. Now was Joseph Smith a Freemason? Okay, I can see. So he probably took some of their material and just says, okay, I'm just going to kind of carbon copy this into the scriptures that I've written down and just kind of make it its own thing.
I think they downplay that though, because like when the missionaries came to my house, I mentioned that. I said, hey, I heard, I don't want to give away secrets, but I heard that Mormonism is based on Freemasonry a lot, right? And they were like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, it's they try to downplay it a lot,
Right.
But I think they want to downplay that a little, so
here's the claim.
I can see why, because they're trying to get away from all the mysticism, that the scrying, because I don't know if you heard the story, and Gazelam can maybe elaborate. That Joseph Smith, would scry into a hat with crystals, basically almost like a crystal ball. And that's how he could interpret, the Book of Mormon, basically, or the tablets, or when he had them or whatever,
Well, see, the claim with Freemasonry and with Mormonism is that what the Freemasons practice is a spurious form of Masonry. And so their Mormonism claims that Masonry is the secrets and all of that passed from Satan to Cain all the way through the blood of Ham and through all the black arts and all of that. It's from the black magicians from Cain, where their form of Freemasonry is true Masonry, which comes from God, from Adam, and all through that. So they see theirs as like the white magic version of like the pure Masonry.
Yeah. Because the Freemasons actually are based, that's where you get the goat symbol sometimes, and that, I mean, they basically believe that they're more on the side of Cain, with Cain and Abel and all that, and they think the second, the Cain was more of, he was like a Mason, he was a builder, he was a rough and tumble guy, and then Abel, he killed Abel, his brother, the old Cain and Abel story, and then Seth came, and Seth was like a priest, and they're like, we don't want so they're basically saying, well, let religion, let Sethians worry about religion. We're Masons, and just like, and they go back to the Solomon myth about, King Solomon had to get demons to build the temple, and they have some myths intertwined with that and other, like they have one. It's called what is it, like Jubal, something Jubal? The guy, I don't know if you know the story where like his apprentices killed him to get his secrets, and that's why they say, well, you can't give away the secrets because people die for it, and so they have like these other interlocutory like myths, but it's all based on like kind of like Gnostic Christianity, I think,
Well, with the Jabael, the connection with that, so a lot of this stuff, I really recommend looking up Leo Taxil and the Taxil hoax that happened in France, because a lot of what people connect with the Freemasonry and with Baphomet and that type of stuff comes from an actual amazing hoax from the 1800s. And there's a Mormon connection in there too. This is the late 1890s. But the Jubael is supposed to be Jehovah, Bel, and El.
Uh-huh.
And so the most evil, like demon god or whatever. And that's what the weird connection with. I think it's going to come up with connections with Yahweh and Jesus Christ and Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca and that type of thing, because this kind of demonic demiurge is a continuation of what we talked about a few times back, Jan, with the demiurge being this evil creator deity that messed up on and why sin is in the world and why evil is in the world and all of that.
Like the demiurge kind of character, demiurge or Yaldabaoth,
Yeah.
The idea is that this is our creator God. He did create everything or whatever. We can't deny it, but he wasn't that good of a God, and he got kicked out of the real like great place, and that's why he had just ideas of how the Paroma, I think it's called, right? The Paroma, where he came from, he got kicked out of because he was bred without consent, kind of like Sophia, like got just created him herself without asking the other archons, which are basically other gods. It goes really deep. This is all in the Secret Book of John. I don't know if you guys have ever read that, but that's really good to understand Gnostic Christianity, and how it ties into even witchcraft, and how it ties into more, a lot of these other, especially United States religions for whatever, like the Mormonism, the Jehovah's Witness, Seventh-day Adventists. They're way more Gnostic than like say Catholic or which are basically Gnostic enemies. And even the Protestants, which were like kind of like enemies with that they declared that the Pope was the Antichrist, and that was the whole why they had all those wars.
Now,
they did.
Now, Gazelam, you had mentioned Quetzalcoatl. Let's talk a little bit about how supposedly that ties in what we were talking about before the video started. I guess in the Book of Mormon, in 3rd Nephi, there's this story of Jesus Christ after he died, coming to the Americas and preaching to supposedly the lost tribes of Israel. Is that right?
Yeah, this is scary stuff, and it really shows how there is a Gnostic thread of Gnosticism in Mormonism, because they directly connect Jesus Christ with Yahweh. I mean, other religions do too, Jehovah Witnesses, and Jehovah is Yahweh, but it's really distinct and noticeable in third Nephi, because he destroys almost everybody in the Americas, like levels cities, and there's complete darkness for like 3 days where you can't even light any light. Even the stars are out, the sun's out, you can't light a fire, there's no light. And everybody's just huddled in darkness for 3 days. And then Yahweh's voice comes through and he starts saying, it's almost in a mocking way to the survivors, maybe a few thousand, like, oh, ye little chickens who are hiding beneath that, like a mother's hen, and all this stuff. It's like this crazy incantation of sorts. And then he pretty much just tells them all, he's like, bow down to me now. I am the one and only. I'm the Alpha Omega. Even like you have all this Greek weird Gnostic language going on and stuff. And he says, if you don't, I will just destroy you too. And then he goes away. And like, you read it recently, right?
Yeah, I did read the chapters 8 through 11, which describes just what you're saying. And some people like to make comparisons between the story of Christ visiting the Americas and Quetzalcoatl. Like there's some similarities of the feathered serpent. You know, I mean, like take for instance, Quetzalcoatl is said to have descended to the underworld to perform a sacrifice, very similar to the atonement of Jesus Christ. And, you know, when you read the two mythologies, you do see some similarities. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I mean, I think also the serpent, that what I always took that as, right, is, you know, like we went over this before in the other things, but just to do a little refresher to put the context is, you know, the serpent in a lot of religions is looked at as wisdom, as like helping us, you know, and then I think that was originally, you know, where they were going with the at least versions of Genesis, you know, where the serpent comes and tells you to eat the fruit and all that. And I think, you know, that serpent actually represents, like in Gnostic, a lot of times, you know, even all the way back to Jesus, like the new God, and the old God is the one that would say, you know, you got to worship me or I'm going to kill you. Which you know, that's not really a good God. You know, he's not helping us. He's like trying to make us like pets. That's why he didn't want to eat the fruit.
And he's a jealous God too.
That's how I look at it. But
yeah,
so the serpent actually represents like the new God, which you know, that's why people say that, you know, people have mixed up Lucifer with Jesus. But it's like, you know, that new Greek God is the serpent telling us how to make ourselves more like a God, and the old God, which would be, you know, and a lot, you know, the Old Testament God, Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh, or the demiurge or Yaldabaoth, is holding us back. Like he wants us to be like animals. He wants us to be like pets. He doesn't want us to be like him more. And that's what I was taking. So I don't know if that ties into Quetzalcoatl, but that's
we have to look at a lot of this as forms of appropriation of things and appropriating things. And there's two kind of aspects of Quetzalcoatl, and a lot of it where the Spaniards ended up historically giving a lot of attributes, like he was this white person with a beard that would go away and come back and promise to come back. But there was a king that was a Quetzalcoatl that was probably named after the god, that also he did leave and say he would one day come back. And there were native peoples that thought that possibly, you know, the Spaniards were this returning of a god and things like that. But a lot of that mythos also is just complete appropriation and misinterpretations and things like that. But it is interesting because Quetzalcoatl has like it's an attribution of Tezcatlipoca in Aztec mythology, which is a 4 attributions or 4 brothers, and the the white Tezcatlipoca, Quetzalcoatl is the white Quetzalcoatl is the one that people attribute to this good kind of returning Jesus type of character. But in his negative aspect is the black Catlapoca is his name translates to black smoking mirror, and he's this scrying device, and it's really a weird connection with how the Aztecs were using that black mirror as a scrying device, and then when the French and Spaniards and all the looting that was going on of the Aztecs brought these mirrors back, that they even ended up in the courts of England and stuff like that. And that connects it with John Dee and
really
Western
traditions. So were they grabbing like obsidian mirrors and then taking them around, and then all of a sudden, I guess, yeah, they ended up in Europe being used in ceremonies. That's very interesting. I did not know about the mirrors being taken.
They still have the John Dee one, I think, in some museum over there, because some of my friends went and saw it. I haven't seen it. When I was over in England, I couldn't get a chance, but you could go and actually see John Dee's equipment, and you could see it's an obsidian. I think the actual use of it was, because John Dee, he was a magician. He set up all the math, all the squares, whatever. But he wasn't a scribe. He didn't claim to be clairvoyant or anything like that. He always had a seer, and
that's where Edward Kelly comes in. Yeah.
So Edward Kelly would look at that mirror, and then like he would communicate with these supposed angels, which are the Enochian angels, right? And so when he would do that, then he would start writing down text, and that was the supernatural part of it, was him looking at the black mirror and interpreting what they wanted and writing the symbols down, and that's how Enochian all came to be. That's why they say it's maybe real, because Edward Kelly was kind of like, he was an alchemist, but he wasn't like smart enough to create his own language because it's so complicated. They thought, but who knows?
The weird thing is that Joseph Smith almost used that entire thing as the template for his early career as a magician and stuff, because he was the seer and the scryer. It even went so far with John Dee and Edward Kelly doing the wife swapping and all of that stuff. Joseph Smith was using that magic in order to manipulate people in those ways, and it's pretty curious.
Everybody makes a big thing about the wife swapping because it's kind of like, and modernly it's like, what's the big deal or whatever, it's not like it's, but back then, was much more of a taboo and everything. But really, I think, I've heard some alternate ideas, is, Edward Kelly was kind of like he was an alchemist, which basically meant he made alloys that looked like gold, like, like how they have fake gold at the swap meet or something. So he would, some of these quartz, he would be like, I made lead out of gold, but he just added some alloy. He made an alloy, essentially.
So you're saying modern day he would have a booth at the swap meet?
Yeah, the chain on a rope on a chain, chain on the rollers, just cut it off, made it thing. But no, he would do that, and also he got into trouble for he literally, I don't know if this is a little known fact, he literally had his ears cut off, like they cropped his ears, they cut his ears like there, because that was just because they didn't have a prison to put people in back then, right? So they're like, look out for this guy, he's the guy. So they just cut your ears and say everybody know, oh, he's got it. That's why he'd always wear that hat that, if you ever seen a picture of him. So he actually died because he broke his leg trying to escape prison, and it wasn't for this wife swapping. They had a falling out on many different things, I think, and he actually was basically put in prison because he was conning aristocracy, telling him he could make gold, telling him he could talk to angels and blah blah blah. And when they found out, well, maybe he really could, but they didn't like his results. They didn't like what he had to say, and so they put him in prison. So he was in a lot of prisons, and a lot of people think that Edward Kelly actually duped, John Dee and like made it all up, or they made it up together, or he just negatively coerced them, or conned them,
They were definitely feeding off each other. I think it got to the point towards the end where Edward Kelly wanted a way out, and he didn't even know how to get out of it. I think that's where some of it got so wacky, because he was almost looking for a way out, because John Dee was so into it and like, forcing him to be there and do a lot of that stuff. It was pretty heady shit too.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in his diaries he says he didn't eat for 24 hours and all. I mean, he's complaining a lot. I mean, well, you got to think. I mean, we don't really have a modern context for this, I guess, but they were basically like prophets of the new Church of England religion, you know, because the Church of England with King Henry VIII had cut off they're no longer Catholic. So before they could have a procession of going to the Archbishop, going all the way up to the Pope, and the Pope is the one who knows the most about God. When they left that, they had no way. And Elizabeth, his daughter, King Henry VIII's daughter, that ended up being like they called her the fairy queen because she was really into astrology and all this. She was pretty witchy. She said, well, I want a way, because she's the head of the Church of England technically, right? But she's not really a religious person. So people would say, hey, now that we don't have the Pope, how do we reach God more? And so she asked John Dee to do that. To so it was exciting. It was almost like he's a new prophet for the Church of England, but it kind of fell by the wayside, they because of the not just the wife swapping, but because of the conning. And I mean, they got kicked out of England a long time ago. I think they were like in Eastern Europe. I mean, when John Dee had to come back, but that was a big dynamic of their thing too, where you're mentioning is Edward Kelly was more of a street guy. He was Irish, he wasn't upper class, and John Dee was, the Queen's astrologer. So, I mean, and he was also the spy master, I mean, the whole story about him coming up with 007. Have you guys heard that one?
No.
I know that.
He was actually a spy master. So spies would report to him, hey, I was just over in Belgium, this is going on. I was over in France, this is going on. He'd tell him all the information, and he'd process it and tell the Queen what she should probably do, like send troops or cut food off to Belgium because they're not liking us, whatever. So he would have his signature was 007, just like the spy, because he was a spy master. But it meant like the two eyes, and like the 7 was like the hand, So it's more like you're watching all the time, And so that was like 007. But later on, of course, it got turned into. Yeah. Well, it was actually turned up like the eye, like that. I've seen it like that. Like you're looking out, like a lookout signal. Yeah.
But that's a sign for tubal cane, though.
Yeah,
so that's
a cane sign too. If it's flipped around.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Not be backwards the camera, but it's just just came to my head all of a sudden. I was like, that's weird.
It all ties in, I think, and that goes back to the free. I mean, for people that don't know, tubal cane is very important in the third ritual of Freemasonry. If you ever read their things, it's a secret word. It's all this stuff, but everybody is common knowledge now because, like you said, of the internet. And I think back in the 90s or 80s, I remember me or my friends, I had a book that had it was like Secrets of Freemasonry. You could just buy it at like Barnes and Noble or Borders, So I mean,
I'm in a secret society, but the manual and everything goes on behind the scenes. You can get it at Barnes and Noble.
If you put yourself,
you can also get it here and there.
It's hilarious. I went through the same thing with the OTO, right? Because I know all the secrets of the OTO because I had a family member that was close to one of their people or whatever, right? Their founder, basically, right? Of the reboot on the West Coast here in California. But anyway, it's like, what could these societies do? If you give away their secrets, they got to take you to court and say that's not the real secret, or that is the real secret, and we're mad about it. So they gotta confirm or deny, right? They got to confirm. People are like, okay, if that's the wrong one, what is the right one?
They can't lie under oath. So
case closed. Case thrown out. So they're not really in a position to defend. I mean, that's what I said. Like, in the old West days, they would like literally kill people, and say it's an accident.
It's a whole new platform.
People were dropping like flies anyway.
Everything is pretty much like so much is online now because of the internet.
Yeah.
Now, I guess for the society to become secret, they have to use different methods and be very, very careful. I don't know how they do it now.
Yeah, and there's a whole thing that people don't talk about too. That's called they call it clandestine Freemasonry, right? So like they have like co-masons with women. The OTO is actually, because the OTO after like the 5th rank, it's all Freemasonry all the way. Yeah, they just copy Freemasonry. I mean, Crowley he was a Mason, he just copied it in. And so, like, people complain about, like, they have letters to Crowley complaining, saying, I just paid for a ritual and gave you all, I'm not going to pay you because I went through that same exact ritual in Freemasonry, right? And he's like, yeah, but you didn't do it with us, you know.
You know, that sounds so much like some of the complaints that go on in the occult community of people selling services. Like, hey,
oh yeah.
You know,
I mean,
it's no different nowadays.
People complained about Crowley's services, and Crowley, it was before they had the internet, obviously, but he had like a flyer he handed out with, you know, how much it is for a reading and all this. I mean, he was soliciting readings with flyers and with word of mouth and whatever, you know. So
I need to backtrack real quick a little bit though, because that is one thing that's really funny about the LDS endowment, is that in the early 80s it was recorded, and then what happened is the evangelical group that had those recordings transcribed the ritual and then copyrighted the ritual, because the LDS church would never put it out. And so that it was actually an evangelical Christian group that owns the copyright to the actual LDS endowment ritual. And the church was like, oh shit, because they couldn't ever put out the copyright. Well,
so do you know what right that is that the modern day evangelical church, I guess, supposedly uses, or kind of was known to copy?
Copy in the sense that they recorded it and put it out as an
right. Well, I'm just asking if modern day evangelicals use that in any of their practices, or they don't at all anymore.
Oh,
they just copyrighted it just to copyright it, and then they just put it on the shelf, or
no, that's an expositor. So they put it out to say, hey, look, this is the crazy stuff Mormons do. And stuff.
Don't follow these guys. Follow us because
veil workers, veil ritual, right? I mean, they call it the veil ritual, right? Is that what you're referring to? Because I think I saw a documentary about that.
The bell?
The veil. You know, like you pass knock and you pass. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, I don't want to give away too, but so it's a veil ritual. They usually call it, right? You know, there was like some disgruntled veil workers, and not only that, but when they showed it, people in Freemasonry were like, "That's Freemasonry." You know, that's what we do in Freemasonry. The knock, the going through the veil, you know, passing the veil. I mean, that was another thing. It wasn't just that they were doing crazy stuff, but they're also, you know, admitting it's kind of like it's Freemason, you know, it's Freemasonry.
What is wanted?
No,
shake, you know.
Hey, Gazelam. So, go ahead and explain to the subscribers a little bit about your mask and that seal on your forehead, because in your other solo videos between just me and you don't have the mask, but now that on the series you tend to wear it often. Explain to them the significance of it and the seal on your forehead.
Yeah, I used to almost always just wear a lucha mask when I would do recordings, and some of it is I'm Mormon true and true kind of thing, because there's an aspect of the second token of the Aaronic priesthood, which is your given name, and the purpose of that is any of the tokens, like we were talking about Mahabone and all the different names, Tubal Cain and things like that. They're token words that are to never be revealed. So there's like this amount of anonymity to being anonymous. But it's funny because if you ever want to get a Mormon missionary off their porch and they ask you by your given name, they say, oh, is Alfredo here? Alfredo Martinez here. Then you say, oh, I've been told never to reveal the second token of the Aaronic priesthood. They'll shut up and get out of there fast.
I'm going to use that next time they come knocking on the door. Just see what they say.
Yeah. I like to talk to them
off of that kind of stuff.
It's kind of funny though, because they're always so young, because they go when they're like 18, but they're all called like Elder whatever, like Elder Schmidt, Elder. Like,
and they just like got out of high school.
Like 18 years old.
I was a priest at 16. I was an elder by 18 years old.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, it kind of loses the meaning, you know.
Yeah.
So what if they call the old people, not elders?
But with the connection of the Solomonic grimoires and stuff like this, this is in a particular Solomonic grimoire as a Solomon's Seal of Solomon, but there's a lot of different seals of Solomon, and it depends on what Solomonic grimoire you're getting into. I mean, one of my favorites lately is the Grand Grimoire. You have this, don't you? The Red Dragon.
I have it.
I don't know that one.
But so this is crazy. Like, so there's some weird connections with the South American stuff, because if you look at
yeah, okay,
yeah, but if you look at the at these, and like, I really think these are degraded things from codices, from like Aztec codices and stuff. These weird profiles.
Yeah, they could very well be. Yeah, of course.
You know what? It's also a connection, and it's not too far from South America, Central America, and all that. Is in Haiti. The vevés that they draw are very similar to the seals of Solomon. I mean, where would that connection come from? I mean, so and then also, you know, there's a connection, and those vevés are not just in Haiti, but also in Africa, like in Benin and stuff like that. So how is there a connection to Africa, to Solomon? You know, I mean, North Africa, maybe down, because I talked this when we were having a class on Goetia. You know, like their symbols seem to be everywhere, and they're very similar. The vevés, the things in Africa, and the seals of Solomon, a lot of them are very similar.
I've been tracking this stuff down, and it's crazy. But Alfredo and I were talking about it a little bit before we went on air and stuff. But there's a particular thread that came out of Spain and Portugal through the slave trade that made it back down into South America, called Saint Cyprian magic. And Saint Cyprian was this black magician that's a Catholic, that became a Catholic saint, but he was like the most evil magician ever. And then he became this Catholic saint that was beheaded and everything. But there's all these black magic books that are attributed to him that made it all the way up into Iceland and Norway, and then through the Portuguese made it down into South America, made it into Brazil and Kimbanda and all of that. And the weird Catholic connection and stuff too. It's like there's a link to all the Haiti stuff, and they're all can be traced to the Solomonic grimoires and stuff. It's crazy. But Saint Cyprian, like, oh, it's amazing shit.
Your thing reminds me, I mean, I don't know if I have all the books still, but at one time I had this like series. It's by Jake Kent Stratton. I don't know if you heard of that author. He's passed away now, so rest in peace. But Jake Kent Stratton, he started with, you know, the book you're talking about, the Red Dragon and Solomonic, all the way down, and then the last one he put out was on Saint Cyprian, because that was like that was kind of almost like the dissemination of all that to, like, you know, and I think they did a little bit of like they did with Mormonism. You know, they took the native beliefs and kind of morphed them into a little bit. You know, I mean, so you know, like, because you know, when I was raised with the family from the Navajo family, right? They would say, oh, you know, it's a miracle. You know, Joseph Smith has these things in his book, and it's in our scripture. It's in our like storytelling from our elders, right? And I'm like, and they were thinking, you know, that's proof that it's a miracle, right? I mean, how would they know? How would this white guy know? But it was like, you know, he was probably sitting around a campfire with some Indians, and, you know, and they told him the story. And so he wrote it in the book. Right? I mean, it's not a miracle, you know. I mean, we hear, you know, I don't know if you, but you know, you get different parts of media like memes or whatever, you know, and just put them together. It's not like a miracle. It's like, yeah, you just got something there and put it together, and now you're throwing that into the story, you know, and so.
Especially
yeah,
19th century.
That happened.
You know, it doesn't matter how ridiculous it is. There's always a segment of the population who will buy it. I think he knew that.
Yeah.
At the very least, he would get some following.
Yeah, and it's always hidden. That's why I think where you're talking your opening quote about the occult.
Or,
you know, these things. If you're a Christian, for example, Catholic or Christian, I mean, there's no way for you to really know that the Pope is closest to God, or that Jesus ever existed at all, or that he rose from the dead in 3 days, or any of that stuff. You can't know.
The thing is, you can tell any population ridiculous stuff like that, but if you mix truth with lies, there's always going to be people who will buy it. You know, no matter how ridiculous it sounds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's where the magic trick comes in. That's why the Book of Mormon is this is a 300 billion-dollar magical spell, you know? It's crazy.
It is crazy.
I mean, that's the whole thing with talismans. I mean, even cash is talismans. That's the way I look at it. You know, if you write something, it has value or it doesn't have value or whatever, you know, and now they have copyright sometimes, but how do you copyright, you know, these old books? Like, you know, in England, I was surprised to learn that you can't actually print the Bible. I mean, I guess there's a special English version or Church of England without the government giving you like a license. Like if you just like, print off a bunch of pages of the Bible, make your own binder, you technically could like get in trouble, like go to jail or get a charge.
I believe it. You know, all the earliest card decks and stuff. Well, that's where even the Ace of Spades comes from, is it was a taxing on the cards. That's why it's so ornate and has such character.
Well, just the history of playing cards alone is very interesting.
Yeah,
religion
and those are other talismans. That's all talismanic magic. I think that's how I see everything. You know.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me ask you guys this right here. Religion tries to become a magic device for turning unanswerable questions into unquestionable answers. Would you guys agree with that?
I don't know if I absorbed the question.
Okay. I'll read it one more time.
It again too.
I'll read it again. No problem.
Okay.
Religion tries to become a magic device for turning unanswerable questions into unquestionable answers.
Yeah, which that's the whole problem with it, with religion, because it's coming from the mindset that it has an answer of truth when it redefines what truth even actually is. You know,
you have all these people that say, "Oh, don't question God." You know, well, how am I supposed to learn and ascend if I can't question everything I'm being told and build on that?
Yeah. Well, plus, I mean, there's really no proof that the sound God isn't just some way for humans that they made up. The sound and symbol God is just to get our heads around spirits. You know, isn't like maybe just a powerful spirit of God we would consider. I mean, some people even say humans that are living are like godlike, you know, or whatever, like Idi Amin or somebody who has all this power. They're like godlike.
Or you have people like Carl Jung, who taught that maybe some of this is just aspects of our subconscious that we awaken as we, continue.
Yeah. And that actually, even though he was in the old days, Aleister Crowley likened that to Goetia when he did his verse in the Goetian at that time, because he did call it scientific illusionism. So he was already around science and stuff. So he said the Goetia, he didn't say it's like, oh, it's all these scary demons and stuff. He said these are all aspects, these 72 aspects of our brain for us to get our head around and just ascend or whatever we want to do, like live our life and ascend, be higher, So he's not saying that it's real spirits, and that's even a big debate today in a modern like a witchcraft occult, magic is it spiritual versus mental, and chaos believes it's just your mental, I think, mostly, like you could make Mickey Mouse a god, and if you believed and did the right things right, you get some results,
Yeah, that is true.
That really groundbreaking with Aleister Crowley at the time and stuff, because psychoanalytical type of things, and separating superstition from more a psychoanalytical approach and stuff like that. It was really ahead of its time for what he was talking about, especially with the Goetia and things, because these books, like, they're way more interesting if you go to the core of them and read them. And it's like what you were saying, Guillaume. It's hard to think of in a cultural aspect of them in our modern contemporary times. But there's one thing I wanted to go about a little bit. But if you follow all the way back to even like some of the earliest works, like the Greek magical papyri and things like that, and even like let's say with talking about the different ingredients that they would use, like bat's blood or these different things, a lot of times those are secret codes to maybe psychoactive plants and things like that. So a lot of times when people are reading a grimoire and they think, oh, how am I going to track down a lion's dong for this ritual, it might be actually talking about some type of psychedelic plant or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I had a good talk one time because I did a review of his book. This guy, he's really huge in Golden Dawn and Goetia. Aaron Lynch, I think it's Lynch or Leach. I don't know how you pronounce, but he did the book on like the grimoires. He's really good. And I was telling him, modernly, the way that people look at Goetia, in the past, people were afraid of those. They thought they were real demons. They were afraid of them, right? And they were afraid, if not afraid of the actual spirit, making them sick or attacking them in some way. They're afraid that people are going to find out that they're trying to communicate with them and burn them alive, right? Because it was the witchcraft days or the witch trial days, right? So there's all this fear around Goetia. But then I was telling them, modernly, people aren't afraid of the Goetia demons. I mean, they've got plush toys. They think they're cute, right? they're like, people who wear T-shirts with it, so they'll have they'll take pictures. Models on Instagram have a little picture of their little Baphomet or little, Baphomet's not one of the demons, but Boone or one of the one of those things, one of the demons in the Goetia. So it changes the way that I think that magic works, because the mentality's changed a lot, because that's the whole thing with chaos magic is like they say banish with laughter, right? So if you see somebody taking it all serious and trying to like be afraid of this demon, and then like some goth girl comes up with just just like a guy in a camel like toy, plush toy, you're gonna laugh, right? So you're gonna banish the magic because you laugh because this girl has a plush toy and this guy's trying to do all this serious stuff. So it's a disconnect. But there was nobody back there with plush toys, or if they were, they had to keep it really low. They were witches. But that really didn't exist that much, I don't think. I think the whole witch trials mostly was Catholics killing Protestants and Protestants killing Catholics. I
mean, Pieman's become a rock star since.
Yeah. And Boone is really popular too. Belial, of course. Belial's one of the,
Now, let me ask you guys this. This is something that I thought would be get your guys' take on it. Noah's Ark, if that story really did happen,
what
would you say? would you say that the Noah's Ark was kind of a lab with DNA samples of different animals, or actual animals going on a boat? I mean, if you think about it, you can preserve all the animals. You have some of their DNA. You keep them in a lab. You have this boat that holds all the DNA samples. All the animals drown. You get out. You can just, there you go, make more animals there. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I think that's more like an ancient aliens idea, which maybe it is true. But I mean, did you know that beyond the Bible, and this is something good. Anybody who wants to read the Bible, they should really read the Epic of Gilgamesh. Which is a Babylonian creation tale. And all these things, the ark was in that. So I think it got morphed through the years. It meant whatever felt.
No doubt the Bible copied the Epic of Gilgamesh and all that.
Well, it actually in that particular one, it talks about the guy and his wife, which wasn't named Noah or whatever, but they talked about there was a great flood and they built a great boat. I don't know if they called it an ark necessarily, but it's in Babylonian, so it's actually tablets of Babylonian, and they didn't have them, until the last century. They didn't have it like translated really even, right? But they found that there's a lot of like correlations, including a great flood and somebody who built a big boat to preserve him and his family and his livestock or whatever, and his farm, which is like, that's a far cry from like where it's like Noah with every animal ever, whatever, which is like
there's no way.
Impossible, But I mean, I think it got morphed into that, and I think modernly the whole ancient aliens and the whole technology, it feels right to me. I mean, I even feel now that we're remaking the machines, and the machines probably made us, like with other machines. Like we're a part of like biotech, and like now we're creating the machines, and the machines will start creating us again.
But when you get down to the subatomic realm, that's kind of like rediscovering what we're putting together now.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm on a weekly show where we're reading the Book of Mormon. It's called Joseph Smith, and the main host in his show is this guy Aaron Ra. He's a Satanist, and I recommend, if you want to check out and have any questions about Noah, just on YouTube, go in Aaron Ra, ARONRA, and type in Noah's Ark, and you'll get all your questions.
Yeah, and I saw you on that show a couple nights ago, and saw you gave a shout out to Dark Sorcery, told him that you were going to be on the show. So
That's cool.
props for that, man.
Dark Sorcery.
Yeah. But now let me ask you guys this. Magick, we could say, makes the process reciprocal, questioning what religion tries to make unquestionable and proposing a wider range of answers to the unanswerable. I'm going to read that one more time. Magick makes the process reciprocal, questioning what religion tries to make unquestionable and proposing a wider range of answers to the unanswerable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, I think all these religions, and that's the thing too, is a lot of them are taking taking a past religion and just morphing it into more what feels comfortable to them or what they want to say more, you know. We're like the Babylonians talking about gods is more like the Greeks and the Romans talked about their gods, you know, like they were like Perseus and Hercules and all that kind of stuff.
You know, most all religion is all what? To collect the offering plate, right? So, I mean, if the Romans take over a certain area and say, well, you know, let's just make them think that, let's just assemble their gods into this religion, and they're more likely to give us their money if, you know, if this is a story that they can relate to culturally, you know.
I don't think religion's quest is a quest for truth or knowledge or anything like that. It's just a quest for control and, like said, passing the money plate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and now that may have been what it had started out as, but ultimately, you know, it's just going to be, like you said, about control and money.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You know what's interesting is what I think about there, and I think that, you know, just in the context of the United States, that's because money is just another way of, like, you know, a unit of work, you know, or of control, you know. I mean, so like if nobody has any money, then they'll still talk to them because they want to put them to work and like try to make money off, you know, because they do, you know, religions do that. They take in people and stuff like that. I think the thing about this religion is, yeah, it's it's like, I'm thinking of this video game where you know, it was one of those back in the day where you had warriors and you could make different things, and they had a priest like person, right? And what he would do is just stand there and talk to people, and eventually turn the other guys, like warriors or peasants or whatever, into your guys, you know. So it's like, it's conversion, you know. It's a conversion thing. I mean, because I mean, it's more than money. I mean, there's people that you know, there's people that run into a room with a bomb on them because of religion, right? I mean, that's not about money. That's one of, you know. I mean, there's people that they I mean, and not only that, you know, but people that just go to wars over religion, you know, and they just this, you know. So
well, for the people fighting the wars, it may not be about money, but the people high up who are controlling those wars, it definitely is.
Because how many
just a way to create crime and create people, you know, they could do the right thing, they could do the wrong thing, but you know, like housing shouldn't be a commodity. Healthcare shouldn't be a commodity, in my opinion. You know, I mean, these are like, you know, we should just take care of everybody. And like, I mean, because we got all this money or we got all these resources, we're supposed to be the richest country, but why don't we do it? Is because, I mean, I think capitalism is a spell to keep people in crime and keep people down.
Yeah, they need to start taxing churches first of all, because the amount that they're giving out versus what they take in, it's ridiculous. Churches need to be taxed first and foremost.
Yeah, I think it's only fair. I mean, why should everybody else but not them? Yeah. Where did that start, by the way?
And the other day, it was like, I think it was in Alabama or something. There was a big hurricane, and all these people got homeless, and there was all these people that got, you know, because of a hurricane there, right? And they said there's like 30 mega churches in that area in Alabama, but Indian Casino is the one who actually put the money in to help these people out.
There you go.
Casino. burn churches, open casinos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
worship the almighty dollar.
I think people could
Yeah, we got
start
you.
a religion based on, more like vices, and a lot. I mean, I don't know if that they would still be able to get the exemption or whatever, but I mean, people should go to a temple or a church, to have a good time, not to be like guilt tripped.
So
The church of do whatever you want.
Well, okay, well, if that works for you, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Someday, I mean, everybody has to have some things, that's the problem.
Well, the thing is, yeah, everyone has to rely on something. Everyone has to put faith in something.
If you tell people go ahead and do what you want, then somebody does something that somebody doesn't like, and they think, oh, well, I got to call the cops, or I got to make a big scene, or I got to fight, or so that's where it goes. And then it's like, okay, well, what do we do? It's like, well, don't ask me. I'm just the same age as you, or somebody who says.
I think that's kind of where religion comes in, because I mean, if you have all these people doing anything they want, society cannot grow, society cannot get to the next level. You need some rules in place.
Yeah, I mean, it could be ethics codes, but they always break down because usually the people that set the ethics codes are breaking them themselves.
Yeah.
And the whole, the whole system just, I don't know. It's just, some people believe it needs to be completely rebooted. Some people believe you can fix what it is on top of what it is. I'm not so sure. But,
Walker, our theory was, but that was back in the 80s and it didn't happen, was destroy and rebuild. I mean, just let it get destroyed. We were like kind of almost welcoming, the Russians, because everybody thought the Russians were going to nuke us back then. Because, in the 80s, it was all war games, or there was going to be a mistake in nuclear. Everybody was afraid of nuclear war back in the 80s, way more than it is now.
That's what's weird with Guillotine being like Generation X and stuff, because we definitely have like this kind of don't give a shit attitude about stuff. we thought we'd be nuked already anyway.
I tell people they don't realize how, like, I would go to clubs when I was like 16, and they were like BDSM and death rock clubs and punk clubs, and there was not even a landline, right? So, I mean, everybody's like, oh, I'm gonna call. I got my phone. But there was no phones. There wasn't even a landline, and like, whoever you got to ride with, you gotta, if you piss them off, you might be stranded in like downtown LA with all these weirdos, And I mean,
remember payphone was a dime,
Yeah, you could if you could get through, you could maybe get a family member to pick you up. But there's been tons of people, people get left all the time. There wasn't Uber, there wasn't phones, there wasn't, like, people couldn't record things, And so it's like, you just had to rely on your own personal ethics, I guess. So.
Well, see, I was born in 1984, so I guess that would make me what, a millennial, I guess.
I think, let's see.
Edge, like my little brother's around your age, and yeah, you're just on that edge. You're not millennial. You'd be I think they call it Generation Z, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. But
Gen Z is the complains too much, and they're crybabies and all that. More than millennials.
I do think society has become too sensitive to things. Like
for sure.
Now we'll take, for instance, like well, I don't want to get into any political discussions, but you guys know what I mean. You guys know exactly what I mean. But like I was saying,
I think I put this meme up, and people had told other people it's inappropriate, right? It was just, you seen that movie, The Craft, with those girls, the witch girls, right?
Yeah.
It had a picture of the witch girls walking, that cool picture, and it said weirdos, right? And that was the T-shirt, right? And like people were sharing it, and people was like, that's inappropriate. So like I was like, how's that? So I looked at the comments, and like, there were some people, I guess, not to get too political, but on the right, it's like they were just against witches, the whole idea of having a witchcraft movie or stuff like that. And well, it's like they're like saying, it's not feminist enough. It shows the girls as being bullies.
I tend to find myself arguing.
So I mean, both sides are saying different things, and it's both ending up.
Times change. I mean, that, like, okay, like take for instance, like I was talking with someone who was of a younger generation to me, and they were getting upset because I guess the topic of disabled people came up, and I said the word retarded. I said, oh yeah, the retarded. He's retarded, and like, oh no, that person's disabled. Like, no, back in my day, we just said retarded. Like, oh no, don't say that. That's offensive. It's retarded. Or back in the day when people used to, it's just the lingo. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah. Oh,
the
no.
thing is, you need lines drawn, but you need a balance there. I don't know.
I mean, all these insults modernly used to be like official terms for asylums. Like moron, idiot. I mean, it was all based on how much. But people with Down syndrome. When I was in the 70s as a kid, I mean, my own parents were telling me, because I was like, oh, that person's like different. They look like a pixie or a fairy. I was like, and they go, no, that's a mongoloid. They would call people with Down syndrome mongoloids. And they even did a song about Devo, and I mean, it was horrible, but at the time, that's how we were taught. And a lot of that comes through with the way that people interact, and they don't realize how like people had to hide the more like feminine things or gay things or stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, people would just attack you on the street, and you called the cops would join in. I mean, it wasn't like you had just because you got just because you're like, oh, there wasn't any gay rights. I mean, if somebody was dressed feminine or wearing makeup,
and not only that, but back in the day, everyone used to use the word fag or faggot. Nowadays, I don't use that word anymore. But back then, it was just something that everyone threw around. It was not meant to be offensive. It was just a word that everybody used.
Well, and sometimes online it meant just a person, because like on 4chan they used to say there's new fags and old fags, right? And that just means who's a person who was there a lot and a person who wasn't. They would just all call it because it was such a common insult. They were like, all right, just call me that. I don't care,
Right.
There's people from the queercore movement and stuff that start up in California, and like Bruce LaBruce and stuff. But like a lot of queercore, it's like we want gays back in the closet because we don't want equal marriage with the heteros and stuff like that. They really pro gay punk kind of stuff. Like it's that band from LA. What was the queer band from LA that was like, I can't remember, but like the whole queercore movement. I just would like to say real quick, like, I don't like snowflakes or political correctness and things. At the same time, I think a big part of it is if you're able to put empathy, put it into yourself to empathize with other people, in the sense that like if you can relate to how that could be hurtful, such saying retarded or something like that, because there are people, like for me, I'm neurodivergent. I'm like, there's something fucking weird going on in my head, and when I was in elementary school and things like that, I'm dyslexic and have issues to where I was put into resource classes and stuff with people that maybe were extremely handicapped even, you know what I mean? And so it's one of those things where, like, one of my really good friends that I grew up with was a little person. He's probably like 3 feet tall, He'd like kick your ass if you called him the M word or even say dwarf or something like that. You know what I mean? Or like,
right. And we do sympathize with people who it is hurtful to. And sometimes that means having to, things change and having to adjust your lingo and things like that, because it just doesn't apply to the time that you're living in anymore. You have to change with the times. So I completely understand.
And I think especially for older generations, I mean, like, now I guess it's okay to identify or tell people they're queer, and even probably people consider me that. I mean, I've been in the goth scene in LA for 40 years, and even though I'm not straight, but I would say, all right, I'm not normal or part of my neurodivergent or anything, but queer was a bad insult back in the day. That was worse than So, but now it's been faded or whatever. But who could say it? Like, you have to be in the LGBT thing and not straight to say that, or like, but it's part of the queue. I mean, it's hard. It's confusing for people that, especially that were raised up homophobic.
Yeah.
Especially our generation, like in school, it was, especially being a punk or a goth and stuff, you immediately labeled it as being homosexual just because you have fucking a shaved head and shit, or because dress like a punk kid and stuff like that. So for me, it made me really able to relate to a lot of gay people, and I had a lot of gay friends because of that situation and stuff, to the point to where I consider myself queer now, and most of, even though I was born biologically male, I go by the they them and say I'm non-binary, just because it shakes the shit up and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't get all angry if somebody calls me he or stuff, but like, ever since I was a little kid, I had a lot of sisters. I like dressing up like a girl and shit like that. You know what I mean? And so it's just like the whole thing. I like how things are changing to where people are being forced to have to accept people that are different, and it helps us in the satanic movement.
We need to be able to get along in order to progress as a society.
Oh yeah.
And so
I mean,
definitely,
That's where it comes from, you know.
yeah.
For me,
So,
being in the LA and the punk and goth scenes, I mean, I think that you know, like the gays just kind of like that was the only ones we would hang out with them, because we were also, you know, and you know, even though there was like some inner stuff, we might have, like, you know, whatever, not got along that well, but or said we don't agree with that, because, you know, this is the 80s. It's not like, you know, right? So when as a teenager there was a lot of gays around. I mean, and some were just like, no, I'm not, but I, you know, so it was like that, but yeah, we protected them as much as we could, but we were on, you know, we were targeted too by jocks and things like that, you know, and so, you know,
When
it's
you're an outlier,
better,
you know,
but I don't know if it's gonna get better, because I see a lot of I see the country going where there's a lot of hate for that stuff again popping up, and there's probably a whole nother satanic panic thing coming, you know, where like, if you, you know, I don't know.
Wouldn't doubt it, but
ready.
guys, it's been very, very good. It's been a deep conversation. Thank you for your time. Anything you guys want to plug before we go ahead and call this a night?
Just, I mean, I think you put my links there. I got my
Yeah,
Instagram.
so Guillon's and Gazelam's links will be below in the video description if you want to give, you know, their Instagram page, TikTok, and YouTube, etc. Follow, check all that stuff out. Thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Religion and the Occult. Everyone who's watching, like and subscribe to Dark Sorcery.
Dark Sorcery.